Welcome to Harbinger's flagship interactive webinar, Power Hour. Select the right speaker for audio output. Test your speaker from audio settings. If necessary, join the webinar using your phone. Use the queue and a panel to share your questions. This webinar is being recorded. Attendees will receive the recording. Let's tune in.
Hello everyone, my name is Subodh Bhide. I am a business software solutions expert with over 2 years and 2 decades of experience working on enterprise technologies, designing different high-grade solutions. In today's AI landscape, my focus and priority is to help HR and learning functions to not just adopt AI, but also help them achieve measurable long-term business outcomes from it. I'm honored to be joined by a distinguished panel of experts, and like all of you, I look forward to learning from their insights and experience. Before I introduce them, let's quickly walk through today's game plan. So today we will try to uncover some of the key trends and real-world insights in AI adoption. We would explore the role of HR in shaping some of these solutions, understand how HR technologies, companies are aligning these AI tech from in perspective of the HR needs. And lastly, learn how technology leaders drive scalable AI adoption. In order to understand this concept better, the team at Harbinger, they have put together this concept of convergence of AI tech, HR operations, and HR tech. So essentially what we are thinking is that Agentic AI as of 2025 stands in the middle of this. If all these three aspects work together, then it's going to be the success of Agentic AI. And there are proofs of that. So 2025 is considered as the AI year when Agentic AI will take the center stage. There is rapid evolution of multi-agent orchestration technologies where different agents are going to talk with each other. On the HR side of things, several large enterprises and small, they are building their own HR workflows. They are transforming the way they are recruiting things. They're building point solutions. Some examples are Walmart. They have rolled out an AI agent to almost 50,000 employees. Unilever claimed to have reduced their recruitment time by 75% by having AI-powered screening and interviews done by some of these agents. And on the technology side, I think things are advancing very quickly. We have Workday that is working on this concept of having agents work as systems of records. ServiceNow is launching AI agent orchestration layers. And we have MeBeBot that is doing a lot of data curation across a company through AI agents so that it can deliver employee answers really very quickly. So all said and done, the convergence looks very interesting, but will the AI adoption journey be as simple as just picking up something and start delivering it? The answer is no. When we are talking with our customers, when we're talking with industry leaders, we are realizing that it's going to be a journey of different phases through which things are going to flow. And it typically starts with the early stage where there is a lot of curiosity, excitement that the CXOs have. There are like tons of ideas coming in from investors, from internal functions. There is a lot of market buzz that's happening. And of course, there is intense amount of pressure to get through this fall. And as things become clearer, if there are use cases that bubble up, then the sandbox phase begins. And sandbox phase is all about experimentation. That is where we do quick prototypes, take up small test cases, use cases, try them out, try to prove early value, then try to gain some insights, some feedback from it. But what we have seen is that CXOs typically could get stuck in this phase because it could be misleading if they take the sandbox wins as readiness for scale. And that's where the pilot phase becomes more important. So this is a more structured approach where you do a limited rollout, try to get feedback from a limited set of secure or trusted users, and then see how you want to scale about. But again, a pilot is going to be substantially different than what a production agentic solution might look like, because over there, we step into the second part of this journey. That's where the leadership comes in. That's where the discipline, the processes, the operational readiness comes in. Because at a unit, you have built the AI. Now it's time to scale it, take it to production. There are going to be compliance issues. There are going to be integrations, support models, sustainability, maintenance challenges. So that's where the need is to create like a defined, well-defined path of how you want to scale it, to what users you're going to take it, what kind of a rollout plan you're going to have. And assuming that all these stages are complete, you have successfully rolled out the first use case, then you can reiterate the process, go to the next difficult use case, or go to the next set of use cases and sort of take one step at a time and take these user stories to production. So in a nutshell, just to summarize this, it's pretty simple. So we should not confuse activity with progress. Know where we stand in this journey and keep an intention of always moving forward. Every phase over here is necessary, so we should not skip a phase. And in case we get stuck on any of these phases for too long, then rapidly recovering from it is important. Otherwise, we are going to miss out on the real value. So just to get more sense of where all of us stand. So this is what I've put forth as Harbinger's perspective. But in order to get a sense of where all of us stand, we'll be launching a very quick poll, a 30-second poll to understand where you place yourself, your customers, your partners, in this whole AI and agentic AI journey. There are 6 options. These are multi-select. We would launch the poll, and I think we have started getting the results. We'll run it for another 15 seconds, and then we can bring up the results. All right. All right. So I think let's end this poll and see how the results look like. I hope the results are visible to all of you. Okay, maybe I'll just read them out in case the results are not visible. So 50% of the audience say that they are in early stage. 24%, which is the next big number, say that they're trying to define a clear path. So they're on the second leg of the journey. 13% are in the sandbox phase. 11% say that they're in the pilot phase. And I'm glad to see that 5% are ready to scale their operations, and 8% are already thinking of the next use case. So they've already successfully rolled out one use case into production. So that's great to hear. And with that context, I think we can now bring in our panel. So I would like to invite each one of them to introduce themselves and share a line or two about how they visualize agentic AI shaping the future of HR. So welcome, everyone. Maybe we can start with Beth, Jason, and Dirk.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone from Harbinger, for having us here today. This should be a great, energizing session for everyone. I'm Beth White. I'm the CEO. I call myself the Chief Bot at times because it's fun, and founder of MeBeBot. We're an AI solution that's designed to really power the employee experience and really connect the employee to what they're looking for with inside organizations and really get us all to the next level of workflow automation, as well as freeing up that valuable time from the internal teams with inside companies. And so that's what we're all about. I spent my career early in HR. I spent many years in the day-to-day, so I understand the different aspects of the role and really bringing in great solutions that are affordable and accessible to everyone. And really, my point of view on agentic AI is we started as a company in the era of chatbots and natural language processing and machine learning. And when you get into the world of where AI has come today, and there's a lot of different types of AI parts and pieces, and agentic AI is that next level. So you hear the term AI agents and point of view of agents. To us at MeBeBot is that agents are working alongside our solution as well as the customers that we have. And the idea is that you as an HR leader professional can actually work with these agents. And in fact, my personal point of view is you can be their boss. So learn how agents work and actually get a role in the whole process moving forward as we all grow and shift our skills and tasks that we do with inside workplaces and get us all to that next level of what's happening. This is not a trend, everyone. This is the now.
Thank you, Beth, and those are some good, confident words. Thank you. Jason, over to you.
Subodh, thank you so much, and great to be with everyone today. Really excited to be here. My name is Jason Averbook. I lead our digital transformation business here at Mercer on a global standard. And what that means is that we work with organizations really on three things. We work with organizations on shaping mindset, working with their organizations on preparing them from a skill set standpoint, and then focusing on the tools that they're going to use to drive success. In this AI space, and just really quickly, I've been in the HR and HR technology space and workforce technology space really for the last 3 decades. And starting with the mainframe DOS era, for some of you that know what that is, all the way to the world that we live in today. When I think of agentic AI, what I like to think of is the concept of human machine teaming. Okay, and I'm going to take a little more of a human approach to this than a technical approach to this, if it's okay, which is really starting to say there's work to be done. In every organization, there's work. We have jobs, and part of those jobs are tasks. What we're seeing is agents come into the world and being able to automate or take over some of those tasks. Okay, when I say take over those tasks, I mean working with humans. Okay, now a lot of people will say, well, this is supposed to be without humans. AI agents are going to take over a lot of the what we call RAD, repeatable, auditable, and documented work that humans do. Oftentimes the stuff that people as humans call boring, mundane, not exciting. I'm in a bad mood today, so I don't do it as well, et cetera. Dirk hasn't had his coffee today, so he's not going to be as good as someone else. Agents don't have to have coffee like Dirk does or like I do. Agents are always working, but they're pairing with the human. And what I'd like to talk about today throughout this discussion is why intentional design is so important. Where do we use humans? Where do we use machines? And together make it accretive. So a 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, but a 1 + 1 = 5 when we think about how work works together in the future.
Absolutely, Jason, and really love the RAD concept and humans and machines teaming together aspect. Looking forward to hear on that.
And Subodh, I just want to say, everyone in the chat, say hi. I usually chat with people in the chat, but I can't. I can only talk to the hosts and panelists. So for those of you in the chat, just say, see some highs. It drives some interaction here as well, because there's an audience here. It's great to see you, Maren and Jamie, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Dirk, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'll keep it nice and short. Hey, everyone. My name is Dirk. I'm calling in from Boston. I'm the founder and CEO of Crunchr, which is a technology platform that turns scattered workforce data into strategic insights so that companies can drive performance and employee experience. And related to the poll, I think we are at phase 4 of our journey, where you can now actually use your voice to ask questions on your workforce in meetings. So what really fascinates me about these agents is that when you combine these agents and add a layer of reasoning and more memory and collaboration, then you start approaching artificial general intelligence. And here in Boston, we're right next to the MIT campus, and you just feel how things are moving incredibly fast. And from a technology point of view, AGI, so artificial general intelligence, is around the corner, I would say 2 or 3 years out. And it technically could replace anyone working behind a computer. From a adoption point of view, how do machines and people work together? I think we still have a long way to go, but this is what excites me most. So thanks for organizing this. It's a very important topic.
Thank you, Dirk, and welcome to the Power Hour. All right, so let's jump into some very specific questions that we have for each of our panelists, and maybe we can start with Jason first. So Jason, when you look at, you deal a lot with large enterprises, helping them with their strategies and so on. So how are large enterprises bringing in AI into HR strategies? Are there specific sub-functions of HR that are super excited? Are there some who are cautious about agentic AI and AI in general?
Yeah, Subodh, thank you for the question. And for those of you that are in the chat, unfortunately, I can't chat with you. So I'll like every time I see Beth chatting with people, but she's only chatting with me. She's not actually chatting with any of the people. They can't even see what she's writing. But really quickly, when we think about that question, and by the way, I'd love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn because I try to write about this almost every day of my life because I've made it a passion project of mine, this concept that we're talking about when we think about adoption. And I like to not use the word adoption because I feel like when we think about adoption, what we're doing is we're focusing on adopting a tool. And what I like to think about is I like to think about we're embodying a new way of being. Okay, if we think about embodying a new way of being, I'm not, and please put comments in the chat, please, because I am watching it, even though I can't talk to you. I am talking about a tool, but we're talking about something much bigger than a tool when we're talking about AI. We're talking about a new way of being, a new way of working, a new way of thinking, a new way of operating. And in order to make that work, I have to embody it. I have to be it, not do it. Okay, so when we work with enterprises, back to the question, the first thing we do is focus on education, not training. Okay, there's a big difference. Training is teaching someone how to use a tool. Education is helping them understand how to think about this and how it's going to be different. So that's the first thing. The second thing is truly helping them understand what's possible. Because we live in a world of confusion right now when it comes to AI. A lot of people don't realize when you actually type something in and hit enter, when you hit enter, that's a form of AI. It's called rule-based AI. You hit enter, and all of a sudden Mindy's name pops up here and says, Mindy from Austin, great to be here. Okay, that's AI. You're like, that's not AI. It is AI, but it's not generative AI, which is what a lot of people think about. And where the world we are today, where generative AI works based on language and is inferring based on Dirk talking to his computer what he wants, and all of a sudden having a bunch of agents behind the scenes, as we're talking about today, take over. So we start with education. We then think about how to enable people, not enable the technology, enable people to work differently. What types of tasks make the most sense to think about teaming with a machine? Okay, instead of me learning how to use the machine is learning me as part of that enablement process. And then the third piece of it is thinking about how do I push that out to people and drive it through the organization, not in a minimum viable product approach, but a minimum lovable product approach. Okay, because if people see that this tool doesn't work, what they see, and when I say doesn't work, it means it doesn't give them the right answer. What they say, it's just another chatbot. Most chatbots today are what I call creepy, crappy, or clunky. 3 C's. Okay, generative AI is not that.
Yeah.
But what we have to do is intentionally design it to be minimum lovable, where people are going to say, wow, this actually feels good to use it, instead of minimum viable, where I put one thing in, I don't get the answer I like, or it's not trained yet. We say yet, people abandon, and then they call. This is why for most of us, self-service in HR never worked. because it was put in as a minimum viable product instead of a minimum lovable product. So those three things, Subodh: educate, enable, and then think about how to evolve that into use cases and organizations.
Absolutely. I think that's a very clear framework that you have for us. Let's move to a question for Beth. And the question is around building on top of what Jason mentioned. Can you share some stories of how HR teams, for the lack of better term, we have put adopting over here, but how these teams look at agentic AI when you introduce these concepts to them? What are some of the factors that influence these outcomes? So any experience, any stories that you could share on this part?
Absolutely. I wish I could say I had as many real world stories of people doing this today, but frankly, I just have to put it out there. HR's falling a little bit behind in the learning curve on AI. And like Jason said, it's all about education. It's about learning where this fits into the world of work that's coming. And Frank, many of the IT teams are jumping on the bandwagon. I think some of you may have read an article recently, 2 days ago, where Moderna is blending their HR and IT team together. And that's really impactful because at this point in time, I believe that that is the direction we need to start to move into in order to get more of the not just generative AI, but agentic AI, where there is more autonomy, but you have to understand the workflows and the processes. And one of the big things I've seen over the years is when IT teams may make decisions on what to do on behalf of HR, not understanding the nuances. And so when we look at all the different opportunities of where agentic AI can help HR, and what I do see happening in stages within companies today is it brings me back to my HR roots of, starting in HR in the late 90s and doing things like reviewing manual resumes. I mean, I remember the days where people sent in paper resumes. Now with agentic AI, you have the ability to create a partner with you to help you scan and source the types of candidates that you would like to get into the process. You can even keep candidates more engaged into what's happening with some of the steps of agentic AI. So that's on the talent acquisition side. Going into employee onboarding, frankly, we've been using types of this automation for years in the form of robotic process automation, RPA, if you've heard that term in the past. RPA was used when an employee was hired and they were brought into an HCM solution, and you needed to let IT know that they needed a computer. They needed a desk to sit at. They needed to be provisioned software. A lot of that was happening through robotic process automation, which were just task oriented. Today, it can be done in more of a flow. And so that's one of the areas where the agentic AI can come into play in the onboarding process to really streamline, because we do want to get those new hires up and running as quickly as possible. There's nothing more frustrating than having that happen. And then where MeBeBot fits into the equation is you've got that new hire. Now they're going through a whole journey with you within the company. How do you create an experience for them that looks different? How do you give them that employee support that's 24/7, that's leveraging a lot of the content you've already created within your environment? And to Jason's point, it's trusted. So building solutions that are trusted by employees that they want to come back to, because we always thought about the world of building out AI in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to help give people their basic, solve their basic needs within a company and then build upon it. We use AI agents today at MeBeBot for communications, sending employee notifications and updates to keep them in the loop of what's happening at the business and reminders. And we even gather feedback through agentic AI agents. So those are different ways along the journey. And I do have to say, coming out of a conference I saw Jason at called Unleashed last week, the L&D world and, perform and how we handle performance and this whole area of education can be completely transformed with leveraging AI agents and just AI to help in that area of this massive shift we have to make in getting people more educated, getting them to understand and not just adopt, but really learn what's happening, especially as their roles will start to change with inside organizations. So L&D can again target trainings, do career pathing, and all different types of. Delta Airlines shared a great example at Unleash of how they're using, maybe there's some folks from Delta out here, on how they're using AI today to help people start in one position, but get to have mentorship and coaching and be on paths to even completely shift their roles with inside Delta Airlines. So great use cases happening today. We just need to kind of speed up the process with Jason's help, going in and setting foundation and building upon that, we can get there.
Absolutely. And I think one thing what I learned from Beth, what you mentioned is that my conclusion is the use case that we select. I think that's super important. If it's of extreme value to the user, I think going back to Jason's point, they're going to start loving that solution. They're going to start adopting it. They're going to start using it more and more. If it's something one-off which they might not appreciate, yeah, it's just going to sit in the corner and be there.
For sure. It is all about that human-centric design and how we're thinking about people, the way they learn, the way they engage with technology. We have to be very conscious of that, as well as, again, giving them the comfort and level of trust.
Totally. And let's bring in Dirk on a related question. So Dirk, we heard that we need these strong use cases that need to be highly repeatable, documentable, and so on. And from a technologist perspective, it might not be very obvious, but the HR users, the HR managers, the workflow designers, how can they shape and contribute towards the building of these intelligent systems rather than just saying that, okay, someone has built something, I'm just going to start using it. So what role would they play to make it more effective?
Yeah, I think there's a fantastic opportunity for HR, even if you're not a software engineer or studied mathematics, to contribute to this movement. Maybe let's start super simple. So an agent is just a piece of technology that does work. It is structured, it can collaborate, it can take action, but in the end, it is a digital co-worker just doing work. And this means that because it is a worker, we as HR have to think about the responsibilities, the access controls, the boundaries, and also the clarity about how to collaborate. So, we give new employees an employee handbook of how to behave, basically, in a work culture. And we have to give these agents a constitution. And that is exactly where HR comes in. The risk is that if we think too much technology and not enough constitution, then we are too late. And if we don't shape this too early enough, and the agents become more intelligent and more embedded and evolve faster, it is almost impossible in the end to understand the outcomes of what they do. So, and then we really don't have a freaking clue anymore how it derives from a job description to, for example, a job grade. I mean, that's one of the things. Job grading is it's perfect basically to build an agent on this. We don't need companies anymore to do this. So let me give you another very practical example. So at Crunchr, we built this personal agent called Crunchr. So in meetings, business leaders, people leaders can use it to ask questions in voice and text. To answer, for example, do we have higher attrition for those people who work remote? Or how many people do we have, and I'm typing, in SLS in the US? Well, we all know that SLS stands for sales and US stands for United States. But in our Workday, we have codified this as sales and marketing and United States. So it's very important for these agents to be very transparent in how they think and how they make decisions, to confirm, like, hey, you said SLS, but do you mean sales and marketing? You said US, do you mean United States? So this type of real-time clarification is the guardrails that we need, which adds to the trust and keeps the users really in control. And this is really where I think HR has to play a role. to think about these agents as digital co-workers that just need as many guardrails as regular workers. So that's my take on it. So everyone is welcome to contribute.
Yeah. And I think I love this concept of having a constitution for these agents, and HR sort of helps it together.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick
Go
with
ahead.
something? I want to piggyback onto something that Dirk said. We oftentimes talk about what goes right. Sometimes we miss what goes wrong. And what's really important in this particular conversation that ties back to that question that Dirk just answered is what goes wrong is when IT runs this. Okay. And the reason that is not because IT is bad, but because this takes the reason that Tracy Franklin at Moderna brought those two groups together is what we're trying to do is we're trying to make work better. Like, that's it. We're trying to make work better. And whether the work is human work or whether the work is machine work, it doesn't matter. But I need one group of people focused on making work better. We finally have that concept now where that work could be humans or that work could be machines. And what Dirk said and why it's so important that HR is involved is HR knows what kind of work HR is trying to get done and what its job is in the company and what its objectives are. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations say IT just stood up this co-pilot for me and no one likes it.
Yeah.
Or IT just stood up this LLM. I don't know what it stands for, but I'm going to use it, maybe. Okay, when that happens, we're wasting the most amazing technology we've ever had as humans, which is artificial intelligence. Okay, so I beg you guys, like, this is not an IT project. This is a business project, which is the combination of HR and IT. And that is back to the Moderna story. That is why that's gone. And that's why those two are, they've been working together for a long time, but that is why those two have come together. And back to Ivan's comment earlier in the chat, AI is becoming a species. You know, AI is a species, but the species needs us. Okay. Now you can go way off to super intelligence and say the species is just going to take over. And if you want to go down that path, have fun. I'm not going to go down that path with you because we're not going to talk about that today. But if we think about human machine teaming, the world we're in today, it's very, very important to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with Jason too. And the reason to bring up the Moderna story is because I can't tell you how many time and time again, I'm talking to HR leaders that are looking for a solution just to find out that the IT team made a decision without even asking them, without even asking for requirements, without asking for their needs. And so this is where, you know, looking at a lot of the HR folks out here, have a voice today in your organizations. Get involved in the conversations because your voice is what's going to drive solutions that do work in the future, whole work processes, and just really do get involved, like Jason's saying.
There's a very nice way of how you can do this potentially. It's everyone knows the concept of a hackathon.
Yeah.
And the idea is that we make sure that AI is accessible and it's fun. So we need to have a bit of fun with AI to experience the power. So over the weekend, what I did was I built an agent that basically takes survey data, and I wanted to see if we can build a chatbot just in 4 hours that learns basically on all the survey data that comes out. And that you can ask questions like a human being, that you bypass the whole idea of an analyst and go straight into the data. Listen, you can build this in 4 hours. This has nothing to do with production quality.
Correct.
This has nothing to do with building good evals to make sure that the answers are good, but having fun and feeling the power, that is really where it starts. So with a bit of inspiration and making it inclusive for everyone.
Totally. And I think those are very motivating words coming from all three of you in terms of how HR should be deeply involved in this and not just as some of you said, like not just take it as something that has been thrust upon them by IT and with a mandate to use it or not use it and so on. So let's move to the next question, and that is for Beth. Uh, in terms of, now let's focus on the technology development side of things. Now, what strategy should a CTO or an engineering team adopt to stay at par with this constantly changing AI tech landscape? And just to give you an example, we only know about ChatGPT and Llama and some of these LLMs, but today I was reading something, and there are almost like 80 different LLMs that exist today, and that number is increasing day and day. There are new, like all the big five technology providers, they're coming up with their own stacks, their own solutions, and so on. So if, as a technology creator, if you decide something today, there's a very high chance that it's going to be obsolete in a week's time or in a month's time, and something better is going to come out. So how should the CTO think about this ever-changing landscape?
You know, I do meet with both HR and IT leaders often, and what I hear from the IT perspective is there's been a lot of experimentation, and like you shared on that very first slide, getting things from ideation to potentially internal build projects and piloting things. That's all great for proof of concepts, but really I think one of the things that IT and CTOs, CIOs, CISOs who are very much getting involved in the AI discussions of what solutions and how AI will look with inside their organizations, realize that it's not a one-size-fits-all. It was really easy to flip a switch and turn on Microsoft Copilot, $30 per person per month. You can tell your board of directors you have AI with inside the company. Is that the right thing to do? Do you really get the needle moving on where the potential for AI is with inside your organization? Probably not. And there's that temptation to do a lot of stuff internally and build. However, there's a point right now where we're at a tipping point where you need the right type of tool or solution for the job. And this is why that combination of HR and IT together helps you understand what is it that you're trying to solve for? Where does technology come in? Where does just the people and processes come in? How do we combine them together and really get to an understanding of what we want as our outcomes? And then think about the technology. But it is getting more and more specialized. Like I heard Dirk mention the term grounding and having guardrails. And so those are two terms that you'll start to hear more and more of as we get into what is being talked about a lot more, small language models, things that are very purpose-built for the right solution. And we went from an era of a lot of experimentation, which I believe was the last 2 years of time when generative AI really became more mainstream and accessible, to now, hey, there are commercial solutions that can solve for this. Maybe this is a scenario where I work with a partner that understands the business problem we're solving for, not just for me, but for many, and can really develop and build upon that for the future. And so I think it's going to take a lot for CIOs, CTOs, and frankly, HR leaders to get involved in what's out there in the marketplace, but really more, what do you need? We hear a lot about different ways that companies are leveraging AI, and I think the one thing that I ask people is, do you understand how that AI is working, how you can train it, how you can improve upon something? I think both Dirk and Jason mentioned, you have to have understanding and insights. And I think even you did at the beginning when we were chatting before, what's inside the black box. Yeah. So be curious, have that natural sense of curiosity to understand, because we all think we're writing prompts maybe in the way we use technology as the consumer approach, but behind the scenes, the technical people are writing prompts within the engines or the solution that they're building, and really understanding what they're doing, how they're doing it, what they're looking for, and more information is coming out about how the AI is behaving to these different types of prompts. So just digging in and making sure you're understanding what's driving the internal, agentic behavior to work, and getting that level of understanding, whether you're doing it internally within your business or you're working with a potential vendor, for example, on a solution.
Absolutely. So I think things are going to evolve very rapidly, and this curiosity about how things work inside the black box, I think that's going to help everyone stay at par. So let me bring in Dirk on our next question. So Dirk, you mentioned that you're on step 4 of that journey that we saw. So how do you see, or what are some of the steps that you could provide us insights on for successfully transitioning a product like Crunchr from a prototype to a deployment and perhaps even scaling it further? So this is more on the product design side of it and less on the adoption side of it.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to have a culture embedding that we're open to it, because it requires, whatever you're going to build and deploy, it's going to require a lot of cross-functional collaboration. So it starts with getting really curious and that you want to become a part of this. So education is important, like Jason mentioned, but I feel we need much more. We need excitement and belief. So therefore, make it tangible and build these prototypes. As I just mentioned, building a prototype is super easy. In a couple of hours with open source tooling and someone who did this before, you can build anything that you want. But going from prototype to deployment is where things get real, because this is not about can it work, but it's about can we trust it, can we scale it, and can we control it? So we talked about guardrails. So agents make decisions, so they need boundaries. So imagine that we build an agent that pays invoices, and you give this agent your credit card. Well, then you better want to have some boundaries to manage the autonomy. The second thing is agents are intelligent workflows that can decide themselves on which path in the workflow they take. So let's take an example of the job grading, for example, that we just described. So in order to train an agent and to understand the outcomes, we actually as HR have to document how we think ourselves. What are the steps that we take as a human to take from a job description, interviews, to a grading output. So if we want to have an agent doing this job grading, we have to write down on how we make decisions. And then an agent can adopt this. So that's the second one, documentation. And the third one is evaluation. There was a massive meetup here in Boston 2 weeks ago with over 200 people from this field at the MIT campus, kindly hosted by Microsoft. And in the beginning of the meetup, there was a hand raise. And the question was very similar to your survey in the beginning. Like, how many people actually built and brought agents into production at scale? Out of the 200 people that were there, 5 or 6 raised their hands. So we also need realism. Let's be honest. That's why I didn't have any problem saying that we were stage 4 and not a stage 6, because only if we're honest about where we are, then we can actually scale. And as we scale, this third part is really important, this evaluation. So how do we know if the agents are working? So it's unit testing, basically. But also, as Microsoft is evolving the LLMs, as the infrastructure is changing, how do we make sure that the systems are still working? This is something that everyone forgets, because once they see an LLM working, it's like, hey, good, we're done. No, you're not done. Evaluate. And we talked about the culture. So that combination, the guardrails, the documentation, the evaluation, and the culture is, I think, what gets it to production. And the last I will say is that even big companies that provide these LLMs and the infrastructures are not ready, because even if you have production paid systems where you have a contract with OpenAI, do you know how often OpenAI is out, is offline, even for vendors like us or for whatever? Multiple times a day, they don't have it. If you want to have more processes with Microsoft, you have to be on a waiting list, because there's just not enough compute in this world today to feed all this AI hunger. That's what no one talks about, but we have to talk about it. So lots of stuff to do, but the direction of travel is incredibly exciting as long as we have the engineers and human design in the lead and not marketing. I think that's important.
Absolutely. And I think what I got from that is this whole different way or different discipline of building these agents, training them, just the way we train humans. Now we need to train these agents,
Exactly.
evaluate them, assess them, fine tune.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very,
Hey,
very
so
fascinating.
but can I jump in real quick with something? The other thing that I think it's really, really important, and I love the fact that Dirk, you brought up all of the issues that arise with technology. The other thing that I'm spending a lot of time doing, and we're spending a lot of time doing, is helping organizations realize they don't have good data. I mean, we kind of just glossed over all of that. If I don't have good policy documentation, I don't have good procedural documentation, I don't have good, both structured and unstructured data. Dirk was using his surveys as an example. That's actually saying that, quote unquote, hey, I've got good data. If we don't have good data, and Beth, I know, has heard me say this many times, all of this is just frosting on a really bad moldy cake. It's going to taste good for a second at the chatbot level, and then the minute that it gives me the bad answer, what am I going to do? I'm going to blame AI. And I really think that we're jumping into the pool of tools, and let's blame OpenAI, and let's blame Microsoft, and let's blame so and so. We're not ready. Not because the technology is not ready. We're not ready from a data standpoint to use this powerful technology. And I think that's a very important thing that we all just keep in mind as we talk about these as this concept.
That's exactly where the evaluations come in, Jason. So the second point that I raised is the documentation. Indeed, much of the HR logic lives in our heads. That's where the documentation comes in, the processes. If we cannot explain it to a computer how we work and how we decide, a computer will just make up stuff. And the evaluations is exactly about the data. So thanks for iterating that point.
Yeah, it is about the data as well. And I love how you say both structured and unstructured data. There are ways, to start to surface, say you have a company intranet with 15,000 documents out there and you don't know who created what. There's so much stuff outdated. There are ways to use AI agentic agents like we're using at MeBeBot to actually say, well, let's use some hypothesis of like, they must be currently working at the company. That's a novel idea, right? To have created something more recent and tangible to at least get to a place where, yes, you do have to do some internal cleanup and get that knowledge out there. And there's lots of different types of ways that people are collecting knowledge, through video recordings of meetings, for example. That's one way to get transcripts and other real-time content generated that can also be used and surfaced as potential knowledge bases of information. We all want to work in more of a consumer-like way within the workplaces, and as employers, we need to help empower our people to have those types of ways to work so that you can create things more on demand in this day and age.
Totally. And
there's one last point that I would like to add, because I fully agree with Jason's point about the data, but it's also often an excuse not to do anything. Like, oh, we need to wait until our data is well, your data will never, ever be perfect. So the way how I think about it is there's one piece of data that is kind of perfect, which is everything on your pay slip, on your pay stub. Because it is checked every month by Jason, by Beth, by me, by everyone. And on this payslip, you see already so much information. It has my name, it has my job title, it has my salary. This payslip was approved by my manager. So we can pull up some organizational hierarchies. It's linked to a cost center, where there's a whole bunch of financial information linked to. So do not say that we cannot do anything because we don't have clean data, because then if that happens, IT will take over and will get in charge. So
I just
be
love,
creative as much, be as creative as possible. And I think that's the task for us as, technology supported HR professionals. How can we squeeze as much data as possible out of good data, feature engineering, and use that as a platform to say, listen, there's a whole pocket of data around performance, potential, skills is another one. Skills data is bad nowadays, but it has so much potential. So let's use this as momentum to start investing a bit in that.
This is
So
so good.
it
I
should
love
never be
Dirk's
an
comment. I just
excuse.
have to jump in on Dirk. Like, I love Dirk's comment here. It's so, so important, and thank you for saying it. That was not at all what I intended, and I appreciate you clarifying that. Like, start somewhere. But the thing that is really important is to set the expectation. So don't be chatting with your payroll data and all of a sudden say, "What's my return to office policy?" and expect an answer if I haven't trained the model on that. Okay,
Exactly.
so it's setting expectations and realizing that this is not growing incrementally, it's growing exponentially. And every day there's new capabilities. Every day it gets
Yeah.
smarter. And we want you, Mr. or Miss Employee, along on this journey with us. But if you don't set the expectation, what ends up happening is they can't get the answer to the return to office thing. They say this thing sucks, and then all of a sudden they never come back to it. And that's what we have to walk the line on here.
That's where the Constitution comes in, indeed. So in the Constitution, you basically define what you can answer. If you're not sure about an answer, how to respond, and just be honest. Say, sorry, I'm not going to talk about politics, or I don't talk about return to work because I was not trained. So
Love it.
there's very
Yep.
neat technical solutions for that.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will discover more such examples, and where we'll need to get to a common path, common ground. So in interest of time, we're just like 7 minutes away from this closure. Let's dive into some of the conclusions that we have seen so far. So we need to have the successful AI adoption or agentic adoption is going to need clear use cases. It's going to need leadership support, a broader buy-in. There has to be investment in AI literacy, where everyone understands the ins and outs, the depths of how AI works. It's not, though it's a black box, at least to some extent understand what's happening inside. HR, they are going to offer a very crucial contextual expertise in shaping these products and building these products. And they're not going to sit on the fence and be observers, but they need to be involved and entrenched into what is happening. Fortunately, on the technology side, I think we are advanced enough to have the technology so that we could rapidly roll out these agents, these Gen AI features, perhaps starting with some of the low risk, high usage HR tasks, and then sort of making our way through it. And the most important of all, we would need cross-functional collaboration. It's going to be the key for making sure that these solutions succeed. I think the IT and HR coming together example, I think that's more of that. It could be other functions as well. I think synergizing and then building these solutions, troubleshooting them, rectifying them, tuning them. I think that's going to be the key of where things go. I'll just run through a couple of slides before I come to all three of you. So this is a surprise for our audience. Harbinger, we are giving away a ebook that we have built. You can scan the QR code and download the book. It talks about certain practical steps, strategies, some of the best practices that are there for integrating the AI agents into HR products. And it's ideal for anyone who is looking for to drive an adoption, to implement these systems, all the way up to how to maximize the ROI from these kind of investments. So you could scan the code. I think the link is also put in chat. You can feel free to download it at any point of time. A quick note about Harbinger. So Harbinger, we are a product engineering and a content engineering services company. We help customers transform the way in which people work and learn. This is through our products, this is through our services, this is through our content technology. We have been extremely active in the human resources, e-learning, digital publishing, and the high-tech industry for the past 35 years. Over this span, we have built over 500 enterprise products and have worked with hundreds of customers. And it was extremely privileged to share some of Harbinger's inputs in this particular hour. So as we go towards the end, maybe if the audience, they have any questions that they want to bring up, we could take those. Or Jason, Dirk, Beth, if you have any quick closing comments as to how you see this whole space evolving, something you might not have mentioned in your responses, feel free to state that as well. We still have like a couple of minutes left, so either we could take questions or you could share your thoughts.
Yeah, there's one of the questions that came in is, do you think employees are generally open to AI-driven HR solutions, or are there concerns they have about AI in the workplace? I love the question. Thank you for saying that. And I'm going to start with, you guys, you should not talk about HR solutions. No one loves hearing from HR. Like if you get an email from HR, like if I got an email over here from HR, but yes, an email from HR or another HR solution. That's not what people want. They want to be able to get their job done. And it's really important that we don't label things as HR. We label things as, and we deliver this in a way where it's just tied to what they do from a job standpoint. Okay, so I would beg you to not tie these things to HR specifically, but tie them to how work gets done, A. And then B, the other question is, do you think people are generally open to AI HR-driven solutions? That goes back into the education piece I said.
Yes.
If you talk to 10 HR business partners, are you going to get the same answer all 10 times? No. But if you talk to 10 chatbots, you're going to get the same answer 10 times. Probably better. But that takes some education to help people understand, and it takes change, not change management, changefulness, opening the mindset to change. I think if we do that, then the answer to your question is yes. At the end of the day, just like I told you, when you click a button to raise your hand and I say it's AI, you're not going to know what's AI and what's not AI soon. So we shouldn't be like over swinging the pendulum on, are people going to use AI solutions or not? Because guess what? That's going to be the only way people work.
Exactly.
Great point,
Can you
Jason.
imagine?
Yeah, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Dirk.
Bob. No, please.
Just a point on that too. It's really, getting employees comfortable with the outcomes. What's in it for them? Because let's face it, we're all very ego-driven individuals, and people are wanting to know why should they do what, if you're sharing something about this. There was also a question about, oh, Dirk, go ahead and tag on to this as well, because there was another question that was somewhat similar, but.
No, please. Continue.
It was around the, how, should HR be involved in the start of any of these types of initiatives with inside companies? And absolutely. What's really was frightening to me is last year, where I heard several times from different individuals, there were AI governance councils happening with inside companies or AI steering committees. And I said, well, is there an HR participant as part of that conversation? And there were many times where the answer was no. And I thought, how could they be having these conversations about how AI would be utilized within the workplace and work transformation without having HR in those conversations? So ask around, keep your ear to the ground within inside your organizations, partner with the people in IT, security, InfoSec, et cetera, because they're in the know on this. And if you're not, you may be being left aside. So get involved, really get involved.
Yeah, I love that, Beth. And I think the best way to think about it is that agents are just another class of workers. Just like we have permanent workers, freelancers, contractors, temps, we also have agents. And everyone needs the same instructions, guardrails, motivation to work together. I would like to leave the group with one podcast that I recently listened. It's called Your Undivided Attention. If you have not listened to this, there was a episode end of April, and it was called AGI Beyond the Buzz. What is it, and are we ready? And for me, I needed 2 or 3 days to get myself together again after listening to this podcast, because it was like Black Mirror on steroids. But again, very recognizable of everything that I see happening here in Boston. Your undivided attention, AGI Beyond the Buzz, 2 weeks back.
Thank you so much, Dirk. And it was very exciting to hear from all of you. So that brings us to the end of the Power Hour. We are slightly a minute over. So I would like to thank our panelists for their time and sharing their valuable insights on this so exciting topic. And a big thank you to our audience for being so patient, so for all the questions, the chat messages. It was extremely interactive. And Jason, thanks for motivating them to put their comments in chat. And I'm sure all of you found today's Power Hour very helpful. It's going to help you fearlessly travel this whole agentic AI path. And in case any of your questions are unanswered, we will try to answer them over email. So we'll try to close the loop on that. So that concludes the Power Hour for today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for organizing. Great job.
Thank you. Wonderful
Thank you.
job.